Hey guys, what's up? It's Savannah. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another true crime video. Today's video is, I think without a doubt, my most highly requested video at this moment when it comes to my true crime videos. I've been seeing this request a bunch lately on every single one of my videos. You guys have really wanted me to cover this case, and so I finally decided to sit down and do some research on it. I think the reason I didn't before is because it is such a newer and fresh case. I was waiting till all the information came out, but once I really sat down and started researching it, I realized that there is so much information in this case. Considering that this case is now solved, I thought it would be the perfect time to just sit down and film this video. As you can tell by the title of today's video, we are talking about the Watts family murders. I know that I say this in a couple of my videos where I look at true crime cases all the time, I look at murder cases all the time, and obviously a murder case is never a fun thing to look at, it's never enjoyable, but there are certain ones that really just hit you. And this case involves children, it involves a family. It's a very upsetting and heartbreaking case. And so with that being said, I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty lengthy video. So with that being said, I'm going to cut this intro right now and we are just going to dive right into it. So this is the Watts family. We have Shanann, who was 34 years old, as well as Chris, who was 33 years old, and their two daughters, Bella, who was 4 years old, as well as Celeste, who was 3 years old at the time. Shanann and Chris met in North Carolina. They got married on November 3rd, 2012. They moved to Frederick, Colorado, and that is where they decided to start their family. And their family of 4 was expected to soon be a family of 5 because Shanann had found out that she was pregnant, and they found out it was going to be a boy. It was going to be the first son of the family. Shanann was super excited just because A, she had never had a son, it was going to be something new and exciting and different, and B, Chris always wanted a son, is what he said. He always wanted a boy, and so she was really excited to be able to give that to him, and she really felt like this was going to be a completion of their family. She was excited for Bella and Celeste to become big sisters, and really was just excited to see her family expand and grow. They even picked out a name for this little boy. His name was going to be Nico. Something to note about Shanann was that she was very active on social media. She was always posting on Facebook and Instagram, really keeping people up to date on her life, really loved sharing things. She would do Facebook Live videos and Instagram Live videos and always post about her kids and her family, and she was really active on there, so it really allowed people to kind of get an insight on her life. And to every outsider, the Watts family really did live this perfect life. They kind of had the picket fence lifestyle, you know, they had the perfect family, their 2 daughters and a son on the way. Like, everyone thought from an outsider's perspective that everything was going really great in their lives. Like I said though, that was an outsider's perspective. So Chris had worked for a company called the Anadarko Petroleum Corporation, which was a natural gas production company. Shanann had previously worked at a children's hospital in HR, and with that job it kind of required her to be gone from her kids a lot. She was never able to spend weekends with them. She was just very busy, and her job took up a lot of her time. And in 2015, Chris and Shanann actually had to file for bankruptcy. Not too long after filing, Shanann got a new job, and I'm sure you guys have seen people like this a lot on Instagram or Facebook. The company that Shanann was working for was called Lavelle, and basically Lavelle was a company that tried to sell health supplements over the internet and health supplements online. I know for me, I have a bunch of people on my Instagram that are always trying to sell like hair products and makeup. This is just kind of like the same thing, just a different product. So Shanann was really into doing that, and there were a lot of benefits for her to do that because she got to stay home more, she got to be around her kids more, she got to travel a bunch, a lot of paid business trips, and she loved it. Like, she really enjoyed it. I watched this live Facebook video that Shanann had done, and let me just tell you, like, it was so bizarre. Not bizarre, but just like unreal seeing these videos of Shanann on Instagram and Facebook. And I think it is because this case is not even a year old. It's still so fresh, and it's crazy and so heartbreaking to see these videos and see what she was posting and knowing the outcome that happened. On June 16th, she posted an Instagram post, and I'm going to read it off my computer so I don't get it wrong. Basically, it was this long Instagram post about how she is living for herself now, and she's doing things that make her excited, and she's having fun, and she's really enjoying her life. And at the end of the post, she said, "I am in love with this lifestyle of just living and enjoying every moment with my family. I'm creating memories and living life to the fullest." So she really portrayed to everyone that she was just living her best life, essentially. And then on the Facebook Live video that I was talking about, she was saying how she had a bunch of travel plans coming up. She was going to go to San Diego with Chris from June 22nd to June 26th, and then once she she got back on June 26th, that night she was going to go with the girls to North Carolina to visit her family and stay there for 6 weeks. So Shanann and the girls were going to stay with Shanann's family, and that was going to be from June 26th to August 7th. From the live video that I watched, which mind you, if you want to, you can go and find all of these videos. They're all over the internet. She was excited. Like, she was so excited and just looking forward to going and spending time with Chris and then going to North Carolina with the girls. Like, she was just really looking forward and really just seemed like she was enjoying her life. So Shanann and Chris went on their trip to San Diego and then came back, and Shanann and the girls left for North Carolina that same night on June 26th. They returned home on August 7th, and on August 10th, Shanann actually had to go to Scottsdale for a retreat with her work for Lavelle. She was only going to be gone for a couple nights. She was really looking forward to it. She mentioned it on the Facebook Live video that she posted, that she was going to have a lot of fun, and she was just really looking forward to going away for a little bit for just a couple days. She came back on August 13th at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Her friend dropped her off and she walked inside the house, and that was the last time Shanann was seen alive. So something that I realized about Shanann when doing all of this research is that she was a very timely person. She had a pretty tight schedule, and she had 2 younger daughters and got to work from home. So she really was kind of like a stay-at-home mom in that sense. And because of that, she learned how to have a tight schedule, and that is what a lot of people said about her. She was a very scheduled type of person. And I guess when you have 2 young kids, I mean, I wouldn't know this, but I would assume that when you have 2 young kids, you kind of have to have a schedule and know what to do and when you're doing it. August 13th is when Shanann got into her house at about 2 o'clock in the morning. That same day, she had a doctor's appointment. The doctor's appointment was for her baby, so she was supposed to go in and check out the baby, make sure everything was okay. Nico did have an irregular heartbeat, and so Shanann was really cautious of that and definitely was not someone who would want to miss that appointment because it was so important to make sure that he was okay. But when Shanann didn't show up for her 10 o'clock appointment and wasn't returning any of her friends' texts or phone calls, people really started to question things. Shanann was known to be the type of person that always had her phone on her, because you have to remember, being on social media was a part of her job. She was constantly having to push out these products and try to sell these products on social media. So she was always having to have her phone on her to respond to people and to promote these products. And so she was never known to not have her phone on her. She was constantly responding to people. She was known to just be really interactive with people. And so the fact that she wasn't responding to her friends' text messages and phone calls over an extended period of time really started to worry her friends. One in particular was her friend named Nicole. Nicole was continuously trying to get in touch with Shanann, and after so many attempts of trying to get in touch with her, she kind of got a little worried, and so she ended up just driving over to Shanann's house herself and seeing if she was there. So when Nicole drove over to the Watts' house, she realized that Shanann's car was in the driveway, and when she looked in the car, she noticed that both of the girls' car seats were also in the car. So she went up to the door and started knocking and ringing on the doorbell, and the Watts had a little like doorbell security camera set up. I know a lot of people have them, just like a doorbell, and when someone rings the doorbell, like, you can get a notification on your phone and you can kind of see who's at your door. Not kind of, you can see who's at your door, and it also gives you an intercom option, so you get to talk to the person who's at your door as well. And so when Nicole was banging on the door and when she was ringing the doorbell, Chris was actually able to tell from his phone, because he was at work, that Nicole was banging on the door. So through the intercom, he had asked Nicole, like, what's up, like, what are you doing? And she said that she was worried about Shanann because she wasn't answering her phone or her text or anything like that, and her car was in the driveway. Chris said not to worry though. She was taking the girls for a play date, and so not to worry. When I was doing my research and I read that, I just thought that that made no sense, because why would Shanann's car and the car seats still be in the driveway if she was off dropping the girls off for a play date? It didn't make sense in my mind, and clearly it didn't make sense for Nicole either, because she ended up calling the police to file a missing persons report on Shanann and both the girls. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline and kind of break it down a little bit in the middle of this. So Shanann had gotten home from her work trip in Scottsdale on August 13th at 2 o'clock in the morning. Fast forward now, August 13th, about 1:40 p.m. is when the police officer officer shows up to the Watts house. So the police officer arrived at the house around 1:40 p.m. that day, and when he got to the house, he started knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, same deal, and Shanann was not answering the door. And that's when the police officer actually called Chris himself, and he said that, you know, he was at the house doing a welfare check, and he was asking Chris to give him the 4-digit code on the garage, because you know how on some garages you can put in a 4-digit code, the garage will open, and you can get in the house through that way. The officer asked Chris if he could give him that same 4-digit code so he can just go in and make sure everything was okay. And that's when Chris said that the garage door actually didn't work, but he was going to be home in about 5 minutes, so not to worry, and he'll be home soon. So the police officer waited there, and Chris finally showed up, and the two of them went into the house, the police officer and Chris, and noticed that basically all of Shanann's personal items were in the house. Her purse was there, her wallet was there, her keys were there, her cell phone was there, the girl's medicine was there. Basically everything that Shanann would need to leave the house was at the house, except Shanann and the girls were not there. I'm sure, as you know, whenever there is a missing persons case and that person is in a relationship or even an ex-relationship, the police always like to look at the significant other and ask them questions. You know, when was the last time you saw them? What were they like? Were they acting weird? Was there a weird interaction? Was there an argument? What was the deal? And that was no different for this case scenario. So the police had asked Chris, you know, when's the last time you saw Shanann? What happened? And Chris had told this police officer Shanann had arrived at the house earlier that morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, and Chris had to wake up around 5 in the morning to go to work. But the two of them had an emotional conversation or an emotional discussion regarding their marriage, and he said that he told Shanann that he wanted a divorce, and it was a very upsetting, emotional conversation for both of them. They were both crying, they were both upset, and then Chris went off to work, and that was the last time that he had seen Shanann. So the police officer then decided to call in a detective. So the detective comes over to the house, and I know that investigators or authorities will do this a lot when they're looking into a case. They'll have someone be questioned by multiple people, you know, see if their story changes, see if there's anything weird going on. And when the detective questioned Chris, he said the timeline of events was that Shanann got home at 1:48 in the morning, which, even though that's not too big of a time difference, it's also weirdly specific that he remembers 1:48 in the morning, and that they had an emotional discussion at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I just said, was not what he told the first police officer when he said that he woke up at 5 in the morning, and that's when they had their emotional discussion. This time it was 4 in the morning, which was an hour before he said he even woke up. I know that's a really early time, and sometimes people can get delusional either way, but to say you had an emotional conversation when you weren't even awake in your first story, it's just a little weird. It's the small little details is what I'm trying to get at. No one at this point knew where Shanann or the girls were. Over the next 2 days, Chris had a bunch of media interviews and did a lot of press and really tried to portray himself as being this sincerely, genuinely concerned father who was so distraught over the well-being of his family and just missed his family so much, talking about how all he wanted was for his girls to run through the doors and tackle him, cook dinner for his family again and be with his family again, and just tried to make it seem like he was just so distraught without them. But that act didn't last long, because the next day on August 15th is when Chris Watts was arrested for 3 counts of first-degree murder. So Chris had taken a polygraph test, which I don't even need to get into the little speech that I do in every video, in every true crime video that I post about polygraph tests, how they're inaccurate. We all know that. I shouldn't say inaccurate, they're just not an accurate representation about if someone is innocent or guilty. You can't base it off of a polygraph test. But Chris was given a polygraph test, and he was asked 3 different questions. I'm gonna look over here so I get the questions right. Questions included if he physically caused Shanann to disappear, if he was lying about the last time he saw her, and whether he knew where Shanann was. And he answered no to all 3 of these questions and failed all 3 of these questions. The Watts family neighbor actually had a surveillance camera right outside of their house, which was able to also kind of look over into the Watts' house. Not inside, just outside, and it was the front yard, and it was mainly just the driveway. So you could see when cars pulled in and out, and you could also see when the Watts family cars pulled in and out of the driveway. So police were able to get a hold of this footage, and Chris was caught in one big lie. So Chris's whole theory was that Shanann took the girls and ran off with them, and because he said he wanted wanted a divorce because the marriage wasn't working. And so he was just convinced that that is why Shanann had taken the girls and played this whole card of the innocent father who just loved his kids. So when police got a hold of this video footage, it was very telling that Chris was not telling the truth. So police were able to see from this footage that Shanann did return to the house around 2 o'clock in the morning on August 13th. It also showed Chris in the early hours, August 13th, at about dawn, at around 5:30 in the morning, packing up his truck with something very large wrapped in a sheet, as well as a red oil can. But this tape never showed Shanann actually ever leaving the house. So there's footage of Shanann going into the house, but there's no footage of Shanann ever leaving. And police were able to put 2 and 2 together and realize that what Chris was packing into his truck in the early hours of that morning was Shanann and his 2 daughters. So when Chris was being questioned by the police, he asked to see his father before he made an actual confession. His father came into the interrogation room, and that is when he spoke with his father, telling him his side of the story. What Chris said happened really blew everyone's mind because no one was expecting that. Chris said that him and Shanann had an emotional discussion earlier that morning, like he said, where he had told Shanann that he wanted a divorce. He said that right before he was about to leave for work, he looked on the baby monitor, and that is when he saw Shanann attempt to smother Celeste. Chris said he went into a fit of rage, and that is when he ran upstairs and saw Bella, who was laying there, according to him, blue because she had unfortunately already passed away. It wasn't quick enough for him to save Celeste, and that is when he said he flew into a fit of rage and strangled Shanann. He said that he saw Shanann hurt their kids, so in turn he had to hurt her as well. When Chris made this confession, he told the authorities where he could find the bodies. He mapped it out, and the authorities went out to the oil tank because Chris had actually driven the bodies to his place of work and had dug a shallow grave for Shanann. She was wrapped in a sheet, and that is where authorities found her body. And not too far away from Shanann, the authorities found both Bella and Celeste, who were shoved into oil tanks. Chris had told authorities that leading up to the deaths of his family, that him and Shanann were really disconnecting. They had been focusing all their time on their children, and it really didn't give them enough time to connect themselves, and so they really just ended up growing farther apart. But then another bomb was dropped in this case that really blew it up to a whole new level. Chris was having an affair with a woman named Nicole Kessinger. The affair is known to have started during the 6 weeks that Shanann and the girls were off at North Carolina. Nicole was a contract employee at Anadarko Petroleum, and so that is where the two of them met, and they kind of immediately hit it off. Nicole says that Chris had told her that he was going through a mutual divorce with his ex-wife. He had 2 daughters as well. He did not mention anything about having one on the way or expecting another child. Nicole said if she had known that, there was no way she would ever have wasted her time on him. Even though their relationship was fairly new, they had been dating for about 2.5 months, it was moving at a very, very rapid pace. Nicole was looking at wedding dresses for hours the day before Shanann and the girls went missing. Nicole was actually the one who came forward to the police to kind of give them all of the information about their affair. Nicole said during the beginning of their relationship, she had actually been to the Watts family home twice. She was in their house twice. She said her visits were very brief. She never really stayed very long, but she did visit the home twice. Nicole said that she believes that financial issues were the motive behind Chris's actions. However, she also believes that their affair sped up the process. Nicole said she automatically thought that something was off when she heard about Chris's family's disappearance, and that's why she decided to contact the authorities. The night that they were reported missing, she had called him, and he was actually in bed about to go to sleep. And in the back of her mind, she thought that was so bizarre because if your family's missing, why are you just like ready for bed about to go to sleep, you know? And what's crazy is that in an interview, Chris had actually said that the night that they went missing, or the night that they were first reported missing, he stayed up all night. He had all the lights on. He was just waiting for them in the living room to come home. And then we find out that he was just sound asleep in his bed. So there was obviously something very off with that. Authorities don't believe that Nicole had any direct involvement in the murders, but there's definitely sketchy behavior on Nicole's side as well. Investigators found her Google searches, and I'm gonna look over here just so I don't get them wrong. They were, man I'm having an affair with says he will leave his wife, as well as marrying your mistress. She had even looked up on Google Amber Frey, and if you don't know who Amber Frey is, then I will have my What Happened to Laci Peterson video in the description box below. Amber Frey was the mistress of Scott Peterson, who was suspected of killing his wife. It was a huge case, and Amber Frey was the mistress, and she had come forward and relayed all this incredibly upsetting information after Laci, Scott's wife, had had gone missing. It was a very popular case. She was very popular in the media, or infamous in the media, I should say. And so Nicole had actually looked up, and I'm gonna look over here so I get it right as well. She looked up how much Amber Frey made when she wrote a book about her affair with Scott Peterson. She looked up Amber Frey's net worth, as well as how much people hated Amber Frey when she came forward. Those are just very odd things to look up. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that. I just think that that's not the type of thing that you should be worried about. So I want to go back a little bit and run you through the exact conversations that Shanann and Chris were having the months leading up to her death. So as I said, Shanann and the girls went back to North Carolina to visit her family, but the two of them did talk about their relationship via text messages while she was gone. So I'm just gonna look over here so I get it right. On July 10th, Shanann texted Chris, "Are you okay? It's like you don't want to talk and I keep trying to talk and I have to dig it out of you." Chris responded with saying that he was fine. Work was just giving him a lot of responsibility with him and new people, which I thought was pretty ironic. He's saying that he didn't mean to seem short and that he loves her to the moon and back. July 24th, Shanann texts Chris, "I realized during this trip what our relationship is missing. It's only one way, emotions and feelings. I can't come back to this. I need you to meet me halfway. You don't consider others at all, nor think about others' feelings." She continued with, "I try to give you space, but while you are working and living the bachelor life, I'm carrying our third and fighting with our 2 kids daily and trying to work and make money. It's not hard texting love you and miss you. If you don't mean it, then I get it, but we need to talk. I kept looking at my phone all night and no response from you. Like seriously, we didn't just start dating yesterday. We've been together 8 years and have 2.5 kids together." On August 5th, just a few days before she came back to Colorado, she texted Chris about everything she misses about him. And it was a really long text, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it basically just said how much she misses him and was super excited to get back to him and work on their marriage and everything like that. But she did end that text message with saying, "If you are done, don't love me, don't want to work this out, are not happy anymore, and are only staying because of the kids, I need you to tell me." That same day at 11 o'clock p.m., she had said, "I just don't get it. You don't fall out of love with someone in 5 weeks. How can you sleep? Our marriage is crumbling in front of us and you can sleep." Chris responded saying that he wasn't staying just because of the kids, that he loved her, he just didn't know what was going on in his head. Texts were also released from Shanann to another friend saying that her and Chris were not compatible anymore. They were going through a lot of struggles and it just wasn't looking good for them. She said that he refused couples counseling, that he really just wasn't trying at all. So the prosecutors had a pretty clear motive for why Chris would do the things that he did when the trial started, and that simply was he wanted to start fresh. He wanted a new life. He wanted a new love. He didn't want to have to worry and have a burden or have things weighing on him. He just wanted to start fresh. So much so that Chris was actually looking at buying new apartments with Nicole. I'm sorry that this gets me so heated. I usually am not like this angry through a video, but it's just very, very upsetting to me. Chris was actually looking for new apartments with Nicole. And right after he had murdered his family, he put his house on the market. So when I saw this, it was extremely upsetting. When the autopsy results came back, it came back that Shanann had been manually strangled. So Chris had obviously manually strangled her. It also showed that she died slowly, meaning that she struggled. Bella, who was 4 years old at the time, her autopsy showed that she was smothered. She even had bite marks on her tongue, which showed that she had fought for her life essentially. She was fighting so hard to keep breathing. She bit her own tongue so hard that it left marks. Celeste, who was only 3 years old, she didn't really have any visible markings. She was 3. She probably didn't know what was going on. She was so young. It didn't probably process with her. On November 19th, Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 life sentences after pleading guilty to all 3 murders. He was also sentenced to 48 extra years for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy and an extra 36 years for the disposal of the bodies. I personally don't think that any amount of years in prison is enough for what this man did. I think he is the worst type of person in the entire world. I think Shanann's father put it best. He said, "You buried my daughter Shanann in a shallow grave and then you put Celeste and Bella in huge containers with oil, you heartless monster. I hope you see that every time you close your eyes at night." And I couldn't agree more. I think he deserves to rot in hell. I literally get chills because I get so angry about this. During my research, I just kept getting more and more upset. He is the worst type of person. He could have got a divorce and this could have been done, but he couldn't do that. He didn't want to deal with it. So the best way that he knew how to deal with it was to get rid of his family, the people that trusted him, the people that loved him, and he didn't care. I read that he is in a jail or a prison in Wisconsin. I hope he spends every day miserable. All right, you guys, that was the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed learning more about this case. Leave your comments in the comments section below. If I left anything out, make sure you write it. That way we are all equally informed. I never try to leave anything out, but there's just a lot of information, so sometimes it happens. If you're new to my channel, hi, my name's Savannah. I make videos 3 days a week week. Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. You should subscribe, join the family, and I will see you guys in a couple days with a brand new video. Bye, guys.